What does it say about a city when a major grocery chain returns after nearly 20 years away and immediately begins building again? In Jacksonville, that question is becoming part of a much larger conversation in 2026 as Harris Teeter officially makes its return to the market with construction underway on a new East Arlington location. At first glance, a grocery store announcement may not seem like one of the most important development stories in the city, but grocery expansion is rarely just about groceries. These decisions are based on long-term demographic analysis, income trends, population growth, and projections about how a region will evolve over the next decade or more. Companies do not invest millions of dollars into new stores unless they believe an area can sustain strong, long-term performance. That is why Harris Teeter's return matters. It reflects growing confidence not only in East Arlington, but in Jacksonville's broader trajectory as a maturing and increasingly competitive metropolitan market. For longtime Jacksonville residents, the Harris Teeter name carries a sense of familiarity and nostalgia. The chain previously operated in the region years ago, before eventually exiting the market. Since that departure, however, Jacksonville has changed dramatically. Entire growth corridors have expanded, master planned communities have multiplied, infrastructure projects have opened new development opportunities, and the city has attracted thousands of new residents from across the country. Household incomes have risen in several parts of the metro area, and consumer expectations around retail experiences have evolved significantly. The Jacksonville Harris Teeter once left is not the same Jacksonville it is returning to today. That distinction is important because it explains why the company now sees an opportunity where it previously did not. East Arlington itself has quietly become one of the more strategically positioned residential corridors in Northeast Florida. Located between downtown Jacksonville, the beaches, and several expanding suburban communities, the area provides access to multiple parts of the city while maintaining a more residential atmosphere than some higher density districts. Over time, infrastructure improvements, housing growth, and commercial investment have strengthened its appeal. The addition of Harris Teeter accelerates that story by reinforcing the idea that the area is attracting the kind of long-term retail investment associated with stable and growing communities. Grocery stores are often among the clearest indicators of how national brands evaluate a market because they rely heavily on sustained consumer behavior. Site selection is influenced by population density, traffic counts, household income, and long-term residential growth. Unlike smaller retail concepts that may operate more flexibly, grocery chains commit significant capital to construction, logistics, staffing, and inventory systems. These stores are expensive to build and maintain, which means companies move forward only when they believe the surrounding area can support consistent performance for years to come. Harris Teeter, in particular, has built a reputation around targeting markets with strong residential stability and increasing consumer spending power. The chain generally positions itself within the higher-end grocery space, focusing on elevated shopping environments, specialty products, prepared foods, and expanded service offerings. Its decision to re-enter Jacksonville suggests the company believes the local market has matured enough to support that model. And in many ways, Jacksonville's evolution over the past decade aligns perfectly with that strategy. As more relocation buyers move into Northeast Florida from larger metropolitan areas, many arrive already familiar with brands like Harris Teeter and expect a wider range of retail options. These incoming residents often prioritize convenience, quality, and experience-driven shopping environments, and retailers adjust their strategies accordingly. The East Arlington location reflects that demographic shift and reinforces Jacksonville's growing position as a market capable of supporting a broader mix of retail concepts. The project also highlights the increasing importance of convenience-based development in modern urban planning. Grocery stores today are no longer treated as isolated retail boxes surrounded by parking lots. Instead, they frequently serve as anchor tenants within larger mixed-use environments that include restaurants, medical offices, service businesses, and residential components. When a major grocery chain commits to an area, surrounding development often follows. Restaurants seek proximity to high-traffic retail anchors. Service providers benefit from consistent daily visitation patterns. Residential developers use nearby grocery access as a selling point for potential buyers. Over time, these clusters evolve into complete neighborhood ecosystems, where residents can meet many of their daily needs within a relatively short distance. That type of convenience has become increasingly valuable in real estate. Buyers are no longer evaluating neighborhoods solely based on schools or commute times. They are also asking practical lifestyle questions. How close is the grocery store? Are restaurants nearby? Is the area continuing to improve? Projects like this help answer those questions positively, increasing the overall desirability of surrounding neighborhoods. From a broader market perspective, Harris Teeter's return also intensifies the competitive dynamics within Jacksonville's grocery landscape. The city has seen increasing activity from national and regional grocery operators as population growth continues. Publix remains dominant across many parts of the region, while other chains continue expanding throughout Northeast Florida. Harris Teeter's re-entry adds another layer to that competition, and competition typically benefits consumers. New stores often push competitors to renovate locations, improve customer service, expand product offerings, and invest more heavily in technology and convenience features. In growing cities, active retail competition is often a sign of healthy economic conditions and strong long-term demand. The fact that this project is specifically occurring in East Arlington is also notable. For years, many of Jacksonville's highest profile retail developments concentrated heavily around the South Side and St. Johns County corridors. East Arlington, while established and well-positioned, sometimes existed slightly outside the center of major retail conversations. Yet, its geographic advantages are significant. Residents can access downtown Jacksonville, the beaches, and multiple suburban districts within relatively short drives. As Jacksonville expands outward, centrally positioned areas with existing infrastructure become increasingly valuable. Harris Teeter's investment reinforces the idea that East Arlington is gaining momentum within the broader retail and residential market. Timing also plays an important role in this story. National retailers are becoming more selective about expansion than they were in previous decades. Rising construction costs, labor shortages, and shifting consumer behavior have made growth strategies more targeted and data-driven. Companies are focusing on markets where they see durable, long-term opportunity rather than temporary momentum. Jacksonville continues to check those boxes. Population growth remains strong. Industries like healthcare and logistics continue expanding. Infrastructure improvements are opening new corridors for development, and the city still offers relative affordability compared to many larger metro areas across the Southeast. All of those factors create an environment where long-term retail investment becomes increasingly attractive. There's also a psychological effect that comes with a recognizable brand returning after such a long absence. It signals that Jacksonville has evolved into a market capable of attracting concepts that may not have viewed the city the same way 20 years ago. That perception matters because investment decisions are often influenced by how a market is viewed externally. When national brands choose to re-enter a city, other companies notice. Developers notice. Investors notice. It contributes to a broader narrative that Jacksonville is not simply growing in population, but maturing economically and commercially. Looking ahead, the success of this East Arlington location could influence whether Harris Teeter expands further throughout Northeast Florida. Large chains often use initial projects as indicators before committing to additional growth. If the store performs strongly, it could open the door for more locations across the Jacksonville metro area. That possibility adds another layer of significance to the project because it positions this store as more than a single opening. It becomes a test of Jacksonville's evolving retail environment and consumer base. For residents, however, the immediate impact is simpler and more tangible. A new grocery anchor means greater convenience, more nearby services, and increased commercial activity within the surrounding area. It can strengthen neighborhood momentum and improve the overall quality of daily life. For Jacksonville as a whole, it represents another example of how the city's growth is attracting more competitive investment across multiple industries. Healthcare continues expanding. Infrastructure projects are opening new development corridors. Residential growth remains strong. And now, major grocery chains are returning with renewed confidence in the market. Together, these trends tell a larger story about where Jacksonville is headed. The city is no longer simply adding population. It is building the kind of retail, service, and lifestyle ecosystem associated with more mature metropolitan markets. Harris Teeter's return after nearly 20 years is not just about one store. It is a signal that national brands increasingly believe Jacksonville's next chapter is already underway. And if this momentum continues, projects like this may become less of an exception and more of a defining characteristic of how Northeast Florida evolves over the coming decade. I'm Luke Christmas, and it's always Christmas when you work with Christmas homes.